Hey friends, so I want to talk about a serious constitutional issue here, and that is whether or not Donald Trump is disqualified from taking office on January 20th, and whether we can prevent him from taking office by enforcing Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Now, you might have heard a lot about this lately. I've been getting a lot of comments. So I want to address this. Now, I've talked about this in great depth before, back when Colorado was attempting to use Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to prevent Donald Trump from being placed on the ballot. And as you'll recall, that case went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And we'll talk about that in a second, but ultimately, you know how that played out. That effort failed. Donald Trump was allowed to be on the ballot, and here we are. But there has been a renewed push to use the 14th Amendment to prevent him now from taking office. So let's talk about the Constitution and what it says. So let me start by reading the relevant section of the 14th Amendment to you. And it says that no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. That is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment in its entirety. Now, by its plain reading, Donald Trump is prohibited from ever holding any federal office in the future. For all time, he is forever disqualified from holding federal office, including the office of president. Now, as you'll notice, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment doesn't say if he's convicted of insurrection or if Congress disqualifies him or anything like that. It says he is disqualified. If he engages in insurrection, he is disqualified from ever serving as president again. It is a qualification. It's not a punishment, and it's not something that needs to be adjudicated. He is immediately disqualified if he engages in insurrection. Now, we all know that he did engage in insurrection. Now, importantly, this section says if you engaged in insurrection or if you gave aid or comfort to those who did. Donald Trump did both. He engaged in insurrection himself, and he gave aid and comfort to those who did. So he is clearly disqualified from ever holding any federal office. So, yes, Donald Trump could be prevented from taking office on January 20th. Now, let's deal with the reality here. That is what the Constitution says. He is clearly disqualified. And let me further explain. I said this is a qualification, meaning the Constitution sets the qualifications for president and for other federal offices. But specifically with respect to the president, it says the president must be a natural-born citizen, must be 35 years of age or older, right? Those are the qualifications. Another qualification is that the person not have engaged in insurrection. So this is just another qualification, because as I said, it operates automatically. If you engage in insurrection, you are disqualified. There doesn't need to be an official finding, a conviction for insurrection. Congress doesn't need to take any action. Constitution doesn't say anything about that. It's automatic. You do it, you're disqualified. Just like if you're not 35, you're disqualified. If you're not a natural-born citizen, you're disqualified. There doesn't need to... All right, before I get off on that tangent any further, let's go to the Supreme Court, because they got involved in this issue. Colorado attempted to use Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to keep Donald Trump off the ballot. They said, look, this man engaged in an insurrection. He's disqualified. And so there was a court battle over it. Donald Trump sued to keep his name on the ballot, and they had a trial on the issue of whether or not Donald Trump engaged in insurrection. And the trial court found that he did. And applying Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, found that he was disqualified from being president, and therefore his name would not appear on the ballot. Now, this had to do with the Republican primary ballot specifically, because he had not yet won the nomination. So they were trying to keep him off the primary ballot. So Trump loses at the trial court level. They appeal it, goes to the Colorado Supreme Court. The Supreme Court affirmed the lower court's decision, saying, yes, Donald Trump engaged in insurrection, and yes, he is prohibited by Section 3 of the 14th Amendment from ever holding any federal office again, and therefore, since he's disqualified from holding office, he can't appear on the ballot. Again, this is a qualification, no different than if he was only 30 years old. You're only 30 years old, you're not qualified to serve as president, your name doesn't get to appear on the ballot. Same thing. So Trump appeals, goes to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court heard the case very, very quickly, which just proves that they can hear cases very quickly if they want to. Take a look at this TikTok thing, not to get off on that tangent, but they decided just like a week ago to take the case, and they're going to hear oral arguments in a week or two from now, and they're going to decide the case before January 19th when the TikTok ban goes into effect. Look how fast they can move when they want to. Not so with the immunity case, right? When Donald Trump was being criminally prosecuted, they dragged their feet to help him. Anyway, so they moved very quickly and took Donald Trump's appeal from the Colorado case. And as you know, they reversed the Colorado decision. And basically what they said is that, look, we're not touching the issue of whether or not he engaged in insurrection. We're going to simply say that you can't kick him off the ballot, that a state can't do it on their own, that there has to be action from Congress. Congress has never set forth a process under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment for how you determine whether or not someone engaged in insurrection and therefore is disqualified from serving and can be kept off the ballot. And since Congress never took any action, generally speaking, as to how that section of the Constitution is enforced, or specifically as respects Donald Trump's particular situation, then the states can't do anything to keep him off the ballot. That is what the Supreme Court said. And it's an absolute bullshit opinion, because as I read, there is nothing in the Constitution that says, there's nothing in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment regarding this clause that requires Congress to take any action to enforce it. It doesn't say anything about Congress taking action. The Supreme Court just made that up. They just made that up and said, Congress has to do something. Well, why Congress? Why can't a court do something? Well, if they said that, the court just did do something. So if they said that Congress or a court could do something, then Donald Trump would be off the ballot in Colorado, and other states would have followed suit. Maine was doing the same thing, but they had their case on pause until resolution of the Colorado suit. So they couldn't say that. This was all about protecting Donald Trump. So they said, Congress didn't do anything, so the states can't kick him off. An absolutely outrageous decision. And what's worse is it was unanimous. Even the Democrat-appointed justices joined in that. So that's where we are with this legally. This ridiculous ruling from the Supreme Court, which requires Congress to take action. Now, fast forward to today. There are people pushing for Congress to take action here. I'm getting a lot of questions about this in the comments of my videos. I know there are some fellow YouTubers out there who are covering this issue to a great deal. And it seems a lot of people treating it like this is a new issue, like we didn't just go through this 6-8 months ago with the Colorado case. But nothing has changed legally. Yes, we technically can prevent Donald Trump from taking office, but it requires Congress to act and enforce Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. If they do, they can prevent him from taking office. They can make a finding that, they could take a vote and say Donald Trump engaged in insurrection and is therefore disqualified from taking office. They can do this right now. They could do it on January 6th during the certification process. But the point is, yes, they can. But the reality is, they're not going to. And this is why I haven't talked about it up until now. And I really hadn't planned on it, but I'm seeing this issue get more traction and I'm getting a lot of questions about it. And as you know, I've been a constitutional law attorney for 25 years, and this is my area of expertise. But I hadn't planned on talking about this again because, as I said, I talked about this in depth back when that case was working its way through the court system. So yes, we can, but it requires congressional action. Congress has to do it. That's what the Supreme Court says. I 100% disagree with that opinion. I think it's absolutely wrong. I think it was decided in the way it was only to protect Donald Trump, but they said Congress has to act. So Congress can act. But let's face it, Congress isn't going to do anything. Who controls Congress? The Republicans, right? Republicans right now control the House, and in a couple of weeks, they're going to, next week, they're going to control both the House and the Senate. So you're going to need a Republican House of Representatives and a Republican Senate to vote that Donald Trump engaged in an insurrection and is disqualified from office and can't become president. Do you think there is a snowball's chance in hell that they're going to do that? Of course not. So that's why I haven't been talking about it. Now, like I said in the comments, people have been asking me about this, and I've had a lot of people bring up the name of a particular YouTuber who has been talking about this a lot. And I hadn't heard of her before, so I watched some of her videos because I wanted to see what was being said out there so that I could properly address it. And one of the things she's saying, I don't want to spend too much time on this, is that, Congress doesn't have to take an affirmative vote to say he's disqualified and prevent him from taking office. They can bring up the issue of restoring. Let me see. The last section of the last clause of Section 3 says this: but Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability, meaning his disqualification from holding office. So you engage in insurrection, you're immediately disqualified forever from holding federal office. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. So he's automatically disqualified, but Congress can make him qualified again by a 2/3 vote. And so what this person is suggesting is that Congress take up a bill, Democrats offer a bill to remove the disability, right? And when that fails, then we revert to now he's disqualified. He remains disqualified. And just by having them take that vote is an acknowledgement that he is disqualified and therefore cannot take office. It's creative, but it doesn't work that way, and it won't work. There's not a chance in hell. They're not even going to take up anything having to do with this. So, I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what way you want to try to proceed on this, it's not going to work because a Republican House and Senate have to do it. So even if you say you take that kind of a vote thinking, I got you here, what we'll do is we'll take a vote to remove the disability, and when that fails, we'll say, aha, now he's disqualified because Congress didn't vote to remove that disability. Okay, now what? Is someone going to prevent him from taking office? Is Congress going to interpret it that way? Or the court's going to interpret that way? The courts won't even touch this. it's an interesting theoretical exercise, but I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but that ship has sailed. Obviously, the court could have done the right thing and affirmed the Colorado Supreme Court, kept Donald Trump off the ballot. Maine would have done the same thing. Other states would have followed suit. We might be in a different position here today, but they didn't. But after they issued that opinion saying that Congress has to take action, Congress could have taken action. Remember, that opinion by the Supreme Court came out during the primaries. Donald Trump hadn't even gotten the nomination yet. Congress had plenty of time to act. They could have held a vote to disqualify him, after that Supreme Court decision, and any time up until now, they could have done it. They didn't. So they didn't do it when Donald Trump didn't even have the nomination yet. You think they're going to do it now that he's been elected? No, it's not going to happen. And I've also heard some, talk, well, John Roberts can prevent Donald Trump from taking office. He's the Chief Justice. He has to swear Trump in. So doesn't he have an obligation to say, I'm not going to administer the oath to someone who is disqualified under the 14th for having engaged in insurrection? Yeah, theoretically, yes, he could. And I would agree that he should. I mean, he's Chief Justice of the United States. He can look at that and say, no, this man is disqualified, and, I'm not going to administer the oath. This man can't take office. You think John Roberts is going to do that? Of course not. He's the guy who engineered, the defeat of the Colorado ruling that allowed Donald Trump to get around the 14th Amendment. You'd think now all of a sudden he's going to backtrack and take a stand on his own and say, I'm not administering the oath? No, of course not. This is the guy, who issued the, he was part of the court that issued that horrible immunity ruling, say that Donald Trump can get away with crimes. You think he's going to stand up and say Donald Trump can't take office? No. I wish. I mean, that we never should have been in this position. He is disqualified, clearly, by the plain reading of the Constitution. He's clearly disqualified from holding office. He never should have even been on the ballot. I mean, and isn't that the most logical way to enforce Section 3 of the 14th Amendment? Just to deny him a spot on the ballot? It's a qualification. There doesn't need to be congressional action to keep someone off the ballot for president if they're only 30 years old, or if they weren't born in this country. They're disqualified. There doesn't need to be congressional action to enforce that. The states, when these candidates apply to get on the ballot, because the presidential candidates have to go to each state and meet the qualifications to get on the ballot in each state. And these, secretaries of state's officers or whoever it is in each state gets to look at their application for ballot access and say, no, you're not qualified. If you want to run for president and you're 32 and you apply to get on the ballot, they're not going to let you on because you're only 32. They're going to make a determination on their own. No, you're not qualified for this office. I can't put you on the ballot. Same thing with insurrection. And in this case, there was an adjudication. Donald Trump is an adjudicated insurrectionist. There was a trial in Colorado, and they found that he engaged in insurrection. So they didn't just kick him off the ballot willy-nilly. There was a friggin' trial. And the Colorado Supreme Court affirmed it. There was an affirmative finding that Trump engaged in insurrection. He's disqualified. That's how this should have been handled. And it makes the most sense. But that's not what the court did. And the court's not going to even get involved now. Justice Roberts will not get involved now because they already ruled that the only people who can act are Congress. So, John Roberts isn't going to say anything about it, but if he were to say anything about it, he'd say, well, I can't do anything. Congress has to act. And Congress is not going to act. It just won't. They had any number of chances to get rid of Donald Trump. They could have gotten rid of him in the first impeachment, could have convicted him in the Senate, gotten rid of him. We'd be done with him. They should have gotten rid of him in the second impeachment. They didn't. We should have been done with him. Here we are. The courts, we could have been rid of him. He should be sitting in federal prison right now. at every turn. And that's the thing, because I hear people, and I'll wrap with this. I hear people say, well, the Constitution is the problem. It should prevent someone like Donald Trump from even being allowed to run. Well, it does. It does. The Constitution has given us all the tools we need to prevent being where we are with Donald Trump coming into office again. We have the impeachment procedures. Donald Trump should be barred. He should have been convicted in the Senate. He should have been convicted the first time. When that failed, he should have been convicted the second time. Regardless, he should be prohibited forever from running again because he should have been convicted in the impeachment trial. He wasn't. Okay, that's not the fault of the Constitution. And the Constitution gives us the insurrection clause. He is disqualified. But the Constitution cannot enforce itself. And if those people who are in the positions of authority to enforce the Constitution, Congress, the courts, if they refuse to do it, the Constitution can't enforce itself. The Constitution couldn't be any clearer. Donald Trump engaged in insurrection. He is disqualified from being president. But if nobody enforces it, if the Supreme Court lies, that's what they did, lies about what the Constitution says in order to protect Donald Trump and keep him on the ballot, and says that Congress has to act, well, the court let us down. And then Congress, knowing that they have to act, they didn't do shit. They let us down. And so if they didn't do it when it was much easier, before Donald Trump was even officially the nominee of the Republican Party, you think they're going to do it now? No, they're not going to do it now. So for those people who are arguing that the Constitution prohibits Trump from taking office and that Congress can prevent him, I agree, they can. But there's not a chance in hell that they will. And that's why I haven't been talking about it, because I don't want to give people false hope. And there's just no chance. Even if there was a small chance, I'd be arguing for it. I'd be talking about this frequently here on this channel. But I haven't been talking about it because there's not only, a small chance, there's not even a small chance. There's no chance. There's zero chance. It's theoretically possible, but in reality, not possible at all. It's not going to happen. Republicans are not going to do anything. And so Trump is going to take office. If something about that changes, if something leads me to believe that Congress might actually do something, then I'll come on here and I'll talk about it. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I wish it were. I wish I didn't have to give you this message, but that's the truth. And that's what I do here. I am always as honest with you as I possibly can be, and I'm not going to come here and talk about this issue, get your hopes up, for clicks. I mean, for views and to get subscribers. Not going to do it. That's the truth, as I see it. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you again soon.